Republicans and Democrats remain at odds over the next steps in the president's impeachment. The president has taken to Twitter this week to repeatedly criticize House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for not sending the articles of impeachment over to the Senate. The president is getting support now from Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, who said Pelosi is not taking this seriously. He called the House process a, quote, joke. Let's bring in CBS News national correspondent Chip Reed, who is traveling with the president in West Palm Beach, Florida, and Julia Manchester, a reporter for The Hill, who's joining us from Orlando. Now, Chip, let me start with you. Is the president and his team confident that in the end this Senate trial is going to go the way that they want without any witnesses?
Well, first, let me say that it has been the president's preference all along that they would have witnesses, but now he's saying he'll follow what Mitch McConnell wants to do, and McConnell has been saying he does not want witnesses. He wants this over quickly. So it's really not clear right now what the president himself really wants, but nobody's confident about anything here. It is completely in limbo, up in the air, whatever metaphor you want to use. And Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican from Alaska, said a couple of days ago, might have been yesterday, I'm losing track here, that she was disturbed by McConnell saying that he's going to be coordinating closely with the White House counsel's office because she thinks everybody should come to this with an open mind. And it is possible she'll vote in favor of having documents and witnesses at the trial. And there are some other, the usual suspects, the moderates or the Republicans who have not been afraid to buck the president in the past. For example, Mitt Romney of Utah and Susan Collins of Maine. People think maybe they will vote for documents and witnesses too, especially with Susan Collins, since about 20 years ago when Bill Clinton had his impeachment trial. She said she needed witnesses and documents, so she may feel compelled to favor that position again. And yesterday we interviewed Senator John Kennedy, a conservative Republican from Louisiana, and he said after this entire impeachment process, he wants everybody to go away feeling that they got due process. Well, if by everybody he's including the Democrats, they're only going to feel they got due process if they get witnesses and documents. So if somebody like John Kennedy, very conservative, votes in favor of witnesses and documents, Mitch McConnell can say goodbye to any hope that it's going to be a quick trial without witnesses.
Interesting to see the game plan being formed. Meanwhile, former Vice President Joe Biden told the Des Moines Register yesterday that he would not comply with the subpoena if given one to appear in a Senate trial. Here's what he said.
Doesn't that position you as if you're defying a subpoena, putting yourself above the law?
Well, look, the grounds for them to call me would be overwhelmingly specious. But so I don't anticipate that happening anyway. But what it would do if I went, let's say I voluntarily just said, let me go make my case. What are you going to cover? You guys, instead of focusing, you're going to cover for 3 weeks anything I said. And he's going to get away.
Now, Julia, he walked back that statement on Twitter today. Why do you think he had to clarify or add to his remarks?
I think part of the reason why he had to clarify, Omar, is because he does have the status of being a former vice president, which means he's essentially the former president of the Senate. So there was a lot of criticism there, and I don't think he necessarily wanted to give the impression that he was fully turning his back on the upper chamber in Congress. So that was a clarification. But I think there is really a concern among those close to Biden as to how impeachment will impact him throughout the campaign trail. You do hear a lot of how it's going to impact the senators running for president, whether it's Warren, Sanders, Booker, Klobuchar, or Bennett. However, Joe Biden is someone who's really tied into the center of this because we know that President Trump's call to the Ukrainian president was about investigating Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. So he will have to potentially answer questions about impeachment down the line. But on the campaign trail, just a month ahead of the Iowa caucuses or the New Hampshire primary, impeachment is something that he doesn't want to talk about. He doesn't want to talk about a Washington-centric issue. He'd rather talk about kitchen table issues like health care and the economy, something voters are probably going to be much more tuned into in those states. So I think his campaign is definitely trying to distance himself from this, but his former status as the president of the Senate, a former vice president, that I think is what's impacting and leading to the statement.
I know it raised a lot of eyebrows. Now, Chip, let me ask you, does the president think that the longer this fight over the Senate trial drags out, the better it is for him and the party?
It's really hard to tell what the president thinks. All we know is what he's saying, and he is saying that he believes the Democrats are suffering from impeachment more than he is, although we certainly do know from the tone of his tweets that he's very angry about it all, so you could draw from that the conclusion that he wants it to go away. But he's also fundraising off of it so far. But, you know, Mitch McConnell, who's a very savvy politician, wants it over quickly, so you would think from that that he believes the Republicans benefit from getting it over right away. So it's hard to tell, but Democrats are making very clear they want it to go on because they want the evidence to come out again in a real robust trial in the Senate. So both sides seem to be claiming that this is good for them. You know, we're not supposed to say only time will tell in the news business, but in this case, that is apt.
Well, Julia, let me ask you, are Democrats at all concerned about the optics of delaying the process since they had made the case earlier that this was an urgent matter? They wanted to push everything forward, and then all of a sudden it turns into hurry up and wait.
Absolutely. There have been some concerns voiced, including among Democratic senators. I believe Chris Murphy from Connecticut, the senator from Connecticut, said just last week or the week before that he wanted, you know, to have a firm timeline or have these articles come relatively quickly to the Senate so they could finally vote on it. However, I think the calculus that Nancy Pelosi is using this is that she's trying to focus all of this attention on Mitch McConnell, who has said that he will not be a fair juror. And we know that Lisa Murkowski, the Republican from Alaska, made a lot of news over the past couple of days when she said that she was concerned with how McConnell was running this. So it's definitely, you know, it's a risk, but I would say that at this point, it is in a way shining a light as to how McConnell will run this trial and could potentially put more pressure on him to run it in a way that Democrats would think is more fair.
Now, we're just wrapping up the Christmas holiday, getting ready for New Year's. Meanwhile, there's been no sign of the, quote, Christmas gift, Chip, that North Korea warned would come. Is the White House treating this as a victory?
No, absolutely not. In fact, our David Martin, our CBS News Pentagon correspondent, has said all along that intelligence experts are saying that it is more likely that if this is an intercontinental ballistic missile test, which is what they're most worried, which is what the U.S. is most worried about, that would come after the first of the year. So it may have been called a Christmas gift, but it's really a post-New Year's gift in all likelihood. So the White House is not standing down or relaxing or feeling victorious on this in any way at all.
A lot to follow domestically and internationally. Julia and Chip, thank you very much.